Hello, my monstrosities. Hello once again. Today I bring to you, admittedly, take two. So I actually had a video recorded, still on Chaos Nights, but right after doing it and then exporting, I had a bit of an epiphany. And it might not be an epiphany because it might not work. Let's get that out the way. This is just me passing on advice that I received. Okay, might not even be advice, genuinely. An idea that was pitched to me for my own faction that there's a chance that it applies to yours. So for anybody that's new around here, has no clue who I am. Hi, nice to meet you. Thanks for checking out the video. I main Tyranids. Okay, that's my faction of choice, and specifically two things come in tail with this. I was looking at how Titanic has been popping up back in the meta. We saw Test Reg Vault with Necrons recently, we've seen Stompers with Orcs, and Imperial Knights have continued to do well with at least a Canis Rex at the very least in the list. And I promise we're going to get back to the Tyranid part in a second. I've been a very like, hey, big models might have a place, and after reviewing Imperial Knights recently, I was like, Chaos Knights, haha, maybe you need to give in and just throw in a Titanic unit. It seems to work. Titanic and a bunch of armatures / war dogs. Go for it, right? Maybe you'll get the same amount of wins. And obviously that's not the case because there's a whole slew of different things about Imperial Knights. The Feel No Pains, rerolls that Chaos Knights don't just have access to for the most part. But in all of that, in this thing, and why do I have this article pulled up? Because I was like, well, the original video, I'm like, oh, well, hopefully the Ruinator can be that one for you, but it doesn't look likely because it's talking about single out a particular target. Which brings me to why I even mentioned the Tyranid thing. It's hard to suggest taking more than one unit. It's hard to suggest some units, and then it's harder to suggest taking more of that one unit, okay? So, when I see single out a target at the start of a battle, of course, my head goes to Norns. That's one of their abilities that we don't use, so it's already not looking too hot for the Ruinator in that regard. But here comes the part two of that suggestion. So, one Norn is a hard sell for most people. In list, it's hard to say take one Norn, and people do that. But then when we take two or three, we get much better results because it's still a bit of a stat check that people they might be okay for the first Norn. They're usually not okay for the second or third. And another suggestion that will hopefully make sense later on in the video is doing that thing again, but for a different unit. The Toxicrin is not good for the most part, and I'm not saying that we've seen any success with it bringing more than one, but it was a nice idea that I saw recently in my comments. That well, they do mortals in an area. Maybe you take three of them, and I don't have three Toxicrins, so I haven't tried that, and I don't know. I don't think anybody has tried that lately. I don't know. But I just figured I'd pass along that idea for some Chaos Knight stuff, and hopefully I can explain why I'm talking about that here. So, Ruinator doesn't necessarily fill me with hope that it can be a one of include, but there might be a conversation for two or three of them if you can pick out two or three targets and make the rest of the match easier for you. This all comes from the fact that, yes, Chaos Knights aren't amazing, right? They're not amazing. And in fact, I remember Ben brought some big knights, Sarah brought a big knight, and Vin brought a big knight, right? For the most of it, everybody knows when you see Chaos Knights, it's probably just Warthogs, Stalker, and your favorite ratios of Brigands or Carnivores, right? Now, going to this whole, well, maybe you bring some big ones, I want to point out something that Ben did here that I don't know if this is actually the logic behind it, but if it is, I think it's pretty cool. Um, the Lancer and the Rampager, and then Brigands and Carnivores in Iconoclast Fiefdom, advance in charge here, Lancer giving Assault for Brigands, Rampager having once per game advance in charge innately, and giving rerolls melee hits of one. So for like carnivores and shit, and we see that the Reaper's Wager style of list is how I like to see these, where it's the ones that were supposed to bring a lot of another unit, but you don't really do that because the stratagems are a bit better. And admittedly, I still think that GW needs to reevaluate how many cultists and shit you lose for playing this detachment. Now, that's just strictly talking about Iconoclast Fiefdom for a second, and then Praetorius Lance obviously has things, which is why an Abominant, where in the detachment that's more focused on triggering the army rule, i.e., battle shocks and more punishments for that, Abominant, I understand, I know. Everybody yells every time I go, what if you bring an Abominant? Like, it's cheap enough, right? Right? Like, it's gotta be cheap enough now, right? I know everybody yells, no, it's not. And I understand. Uh, but it's got to be cheap enough now, right? Right? So jokes aside, an Abominate here makes sense. Lancer, I think, apparently just makes sense in general, especially when you throw on Aura of Terra, Lancer's Day with the Kids, pretty funny. Um, and, sorry, we already went through Ben. So, I can understand some of these picks, and even further, now we get into, well, not only just this situation that I think can be addressed, but here's the passing on suggestion, and that the army rule and a couple of other things made me realize that maybe there's a slight chance that, yes, I always saw it like maybe Chaos Knights just need a Canis Rex equivalent. Maybe you need one really good Titanic unit that you bring and does all the things, right? Like just does it, and then the rest armatures equivalents do it, fine, play the objective, yada yada yada. But what if the strength of Chaos Knights compared to being the polar opposite, right? Where Imperial Knights, yeah, if all of them have a feel no pain, effectively you need to punch a little bit harder, like to get through them. Like they have effectively more wounds than is on their data sheet. And also, with of course Lalo the Tyrant, right? I think I called the right one. There's some rerolls and some other things, and you can just make yourself better. Now, Praetorius Lance and um, the Iconoclast Fiefdom do have some access to increased durability, like the Stain for the Weak can give you a 6-up Feel No Pain in the fight phase, 5-up Feel No Pain against battle shocked models, right? And Diabolic Bulwark can give you a 4-up Invuln versus ranged attack. So, like, there is the opportunity for things like that. And then Iconoclast Fiefdom, there's an enhancement that can give you a 6-up Field of Pain for 35 points. So, like, there is technically, like, not even technically, objectively, there are things to increase the survivability. But obviously, that's not what the Chaos Knights do. That's the Imperial Knight thing. Chaos Knight, I guess, in the design space, is the opposite, where you are supposed to do more output, right? More damage some way. And you can have survivability by battle shocking and taking -1 to hit against, well, towards you. But, the battle shock gives you +1 to wound. And the thing about, Praetorius Lance is that it gives you access to battle shocking your opponent in their command phase so that the -1 to hit can come in. And Despair Aura makes it so that it happens supposedly, excuse me, uh, more often, right? Now getting to the argument, not argument, suggestion that was given to me is to maybe bring more of them. Because if you can't effectively have more wounds across your army, maybe you just bring more wounds. And even further, I think there's a chance that that could have been the space here. Like, I guess that could have been what's going on here. Because another thing that I like about Ben's list here, yes, I know it's Iconoclast fiefdom. Now I've been begging for that to happen forever. But also, if you look at the Lancer, it can give War Dogs Assault and can tank shock for 0 CP even if somebody else has done it. And then you look at the Rampager, it gives War Dogs reroll hit rolls of 1 in melee and can get sustained and advance and charge, right? Put those together for some War Dogs, and now you have Brigands with Assault and Carnivores rerolling melee hits of 1 in a detachment that they can get advance and charge, right? So, in my head, I know that's a lot of points, right? We're looking at, what, 800 points? Can I do math? Yes. 800 points already at the list, right? Now, just saying again, hey, just saying, if Ben can pull it off, there's a chance, right? But maybe the design space of Chaos Knights, instead of one big knight, is really, they have their bondsman abilities that kind of fell by the wayside. A lot of people wish that they were back to being better. But you also have over here the auras that, even with something like a long leash, right? One abhorrent model, excuse me, can't say that for some odd reason, and 3 War Dog models in your command phase, you can transfer your aura stuff to them, right? So, giving 3 War Dogs Assault as they go across the field, and then you have these, and then you have a Rampager falling behind them with advance and charge. Like, there's things. Okay, technically you can't because, try not to block yourself out. All that thing. They're not flying, right? But, you know, uh, technically that could transfer over to Praetorus Lance, even though that was Iconoclast Fiefdom where they get advance and charge. But that's where I want to start having that conversation. Like, maybe, just maybe, there's, instead of doing the one big equivalent, you go with 2. Because 2 people, or 2 models with T12, 3 up save, 5 up invuln versus range, and 22 wounds means that your opponent has to figure out how to get through 44 wounds. And not too many opponents are equipped to handle that. Now, of course, there will always be some, and some armies in general, that will be able to handle that. Let's not sell that at all, right? But instead of being trapped in War Dog only simulator still until your codex comes out, and don't get me wrong, I hope that the codex fixes the issue in a better way than this temporary suggestion now. I hope it does. But for now, is there a world where you take a Knight Rampager and a Knight Desecrator, and now your War Dogs are re-rolling hit rolls of 1 for pretty much anything they want to do, while you have a big Knight that can take away the monsters and vehicles that might be able to handle your War Dogs? And same for the Rampager, right? Is there a world where you start comboing out these aura abilities to really make your list, hey, 2 dog walkers and their hounds on the loose, right? And for this last one, Abominant. So going to that Toxicrin thing that I said, where that was a suggestion that I was given, maybe, just maybe, there's a world in which you do take 2 Knight Abominants to turn on your army rule against other things and put out mortal wounds. And if there's mortal wounds, that means in their turn, while they are within a foot of your Chaos Knight, they have to take a Battle Shock test. And if they have to take a Battle Shock test, it's at -1, and there's a chance for now a good portion of your army to be -1 to hit. All right, maybe, just maybe, there's that. Or even, maybe, again, just maybe, looking at ratios and whatnot, because that's still OC10. Like this is still OC10 coming again from a Norn player. That's just 5 less OC. Like that's still OC10. Maybe we even get crazier. Maybe there's a world where you do go for the Imperial Knight style of list where it's 3 big knights, an Abominant, a Rampager, and a Desecrator. Okay, hold on. I know. I know you're already typing that there's no way in hell that you do this. But I don't know, maybe. Right? Maybe you throw an Abominant in the middle. Let him exist there. And then punish people with tiny war dogs that now have rerolls of whatever you want, right? There is the Cerastus Knight. Oh wait, I got this. I got this. Oh, is it Atropos? Damn, I knew it was Acheron, right? Was it Acheron? Yes. Okay, it's Acheron. Sorry, I should have planned that better. But unrestrained terror, while a friendly war dog model is within 3 inches of this. While a friendly war dog model is within 6 inches of this model is affected by this ability at the start of the fight phase. Each enemy unit within engagement range of one or more war dog units affected by this ability must take a battle shock test. Maybe, just maybe, there's a world where you pair Acheron with an Abominant, and now your opponent really has to figure out not only how to score points, right? Uh, but take down 2 giant knights and little knights, right? So I'm just saying maybe there's a slim chance that Chaos Knights really got to focus more on the buddy system. And now here's the downside, the reality of some situations, okay? I really I know this from again playing Tyranids that when people tell you, yeah, your army just has to do the synergy, it's gotta find synergy. So much synergy, it's got the combo piece, the synergy. That the reality of it is that the list that will give me most consistent results, usually, is me saying, fuck all this synergy shit, and I take 3 Exocrines, 2 Tyrannofexes, 2 Maliceptors, some Lictors, Hive Tyrant, call it a day. Right? Right. Because unfortunately, 40k is not designed for setting up combo spaces or combo pieces. Kind of another thing that I think might be why Tau is struggling so bad this edition, right? It's like, yeah, you gotta set up and then there's spotting and then but no, you can't spot with that one, but you can spot with this one, you can spot with this one. You like, I understand the pain of hearing that synergy might be the answer. But just to keep you all a little bit more sane, what if? What if Chaos Knights are the actual faction that have synergy in this area, right? In this world, maybe there's a place where Chaos Knights do it. And also, it could also be said, now, for what I just was tossing out, Abominant and Acheron, I would imagine that you stick for Praetorus Lands for that one, right? Um, into that space. But, going to, well, I guess this applies to Praetorus Lands too, but like there's still access to allies. And I've still been wondering when people are going to put blue horrors in lists so they have infiltrate and -1 to some battle shock test, right? Like I know everybody does the Nurglings. And again, here's the other thing. People already bring Rodigus for that profile. Like I guess I should have talked about this earlier. I know you all bring Rodigus in the list to kind of handle exactly this. Bringing a T12 body with 22 wounds. I get it. I got it. But what if it had access to your army rule and could do shit, right? What if you could do that? So, while we're bringing bodies, and Rodigus is also cheaper, I got that as well. But, I kind of Clash Fiefdom tried to open the door to say, hey, you could bring other things to do other things. So, of course, everybody knows, or the first thing that everybody looked at is like, what if I took Cultist Firebrand? sustained lethal +1 to wound because of some battle shock tests, things like that. Everybody looked at that and that's appealing. But Iconoclast Fiefdom, I would imagine, would be more comfy looking at maybe that first Rampager Desecrator situation more than Trade Taurus Lance. Maybe. Maybe. I don't know. But I think I just wanted to share a suggestion that happened, and triple Norn works better for us. Okay, it works better for us than singular Norn more often than not. That's a lot of points. Like there's a lot of points in your list, but they're also not T12 with 20 plus wounds. They're T11 with 16 wounds. Um, so it it's less durable, even though it feels not that way for some people. You kick in some invones and some things, whatever. And hey, you have access to stratagems for Feel No Pains. I know we have 5 of Feel No Pain on the objective. And you can make it the 4-up invone at range. But, I say all this to say that I was thinking too long that Chaos Knights need a Canis Rex. And I think, in truth, maybe there's hope for a Norn build. A triple Norn build. Hell, maybe actually triple Titanic Knights. Like, Imperial Knights have lists that have performed recently that have triple Titanic units. Canis Rex, it was Lancer and... Or was it double Atropos? Like, one was double Atropos and Canis or something like that. Either way. So I know it technically fits in the list, and you are looking at OC10, okay? So I say all this to say that if you're bored with running the same fucking War Dogs, maybe there's a world where you don't run the War Dogs and you run less War Dogs. You're still running the War Dogs. And try to pair up abilities for synergy. Right? Maybe you do that. So just wanted to pitch that one. If anybody has tried that recently and had any results, I'd love to hear it. Just wanted to share that the same way it's been shared with me. And we've seen results with it for Norns, not as much for Toxicranes lately, but I also haven't tried them a damn self, and I don't know anybody that owns 3 of them, so who knows. But yeah, if you like the video, like it, got a comment for me, comment, and until next time, peace out, my monstrosities.